There we go. Okay, so great to see everybody today. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shekidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
So it's been a couple weeks, and thank you for your patience as our schedule is flexible. We have class today, obviously, and next Sunday, Erev Hanukkah, and then the 25th and January 1st, we will not be having class. I will be away then again, but that'll be it for the time being until February, until President's Week. So we have this week and next week, and then off for 2 more weeks. Okay, so we left off last time at this Mishnah. Actually, we're at the Gemara. We had read the Mishnah last time, but let's read the Mishnah again because I read ahead, which I usually don't do, and we're getting into practicalities of business, doing business with non-Jews, but more than just non-Jews, with idol worshipers. Okay, with regard to a city.
Could you make that culture?
Yes, I can.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah. With regard to a city in which idol worship is practiced and in which there are stores that are adorned for the sake of idol worship, and there are others that are not adorned, this was in fact an incident that occurred in Beit Sha'an, and the sages said, with regard to the adorned shops, it is prohibited to buy from them, but in the case of those that are not adorned, it is permitted. All right, so we had talked about the city of Beit Sha'an last time, and what kind of adornments might be found on a door, and just one second here. So if we just look at the background here, adorned, it is evident from various sources that certain deities, particularly those associated with the rites of Dionysus, whose principal rite was held in Beit Sha'an, were adorned with decorations from nature, such as roses and myrtle. Similarly, the doors of worshippers were decorated with flowers on the day of their festival. Consequently, it was evident that the owners of adorned stores were participating in the ritual of that day, whereas owners of the unadorned stores were not taking part. And so here is just an example of a representation of Dionysus with a wreath on her head. Okay, so the issue here is idol worship. And the issue is the trappings of idol worship and whether it is permitted to do business with a business that has the trappings of idol worship on and around the store. Because the idea is that if you're doing business with them, you're somehow contributing or helping them benefit their idol worship. And that can't be. So let's look at the Gemara and the discussion here as to how we deal with this. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says, so Shimon ben Lakish is in that transition generation between the Mishnah and the Gemara. So in the 200s, Rabbi Shimon, in the land of Israel, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says, they taught that buying is prohibited only in the case of stores that are adorned with roses and myrtle, just like the side comment pointed out, roses and myrtle for Dionysus, as one derives benefit from their smell, and they serve as offerings to objects of idol worship. But with regard to stores that are adorned with fruit, it is permitted to buy from them. Okay, so now, I don't know about adornments on stores, and I guess you could understand roses and myrtle as an adornment. Like you walk into certain stores and there's a fragrance in the store, and the fragrance is supposed to be calming or enticing, that kind of make the shopping experience pleasant and make you want to stay and look around, which would then entice you um, to purchase something. So roses and myrtle, sure, but adorned with fruit. So I don't know. I mean, it's like, is it like Trader Joe's or Costco where they have the people with samples giving out tastes to people who are shopping to get them to perhaps buy that or some other item in the store? What would the adornments of fruit be? I don't know, and there's no note to it here. But the question about the fruit is not a trapping of idol worship. The roses and myrtle are. Okay, so there's right. So we'll get to it, but so Reish Lakish says if it's roses and myrtle, then no, because that's idol worship. If it's fruit, it's okay. What is the reason that they are permitted? As the verse states, and there shall cleave nothing dedicated to your hand. So that's from Deuteronomy 13, where we get a lot of the commandments against the prohibitions against idol worship and dealing with anybody with idol worship. And essentially, Deuteronomy is talking about annihilating the indigenous idol worshiping population of the land of Israel to prepare the land of Israel, which is holy, for the holy people of Israel. So Deuteronomy has a very, very anti-idolatry focus, and it is quite violent and militant in its focus as well. And using the word cherem, the Hebrew for this verse is lo yidbak biyadcha, nothing should stick to your hand, me'uma. Lo yidbak biyadcha me'uma, not one scrap should stick to your hand, min hacherem, from that which is prohibited. Okay, so the English translation is a little bit off. This my literal translation that I just gave you has a sense here. Nothing. So when you clean out the land of Israel, there should be nothing left. It's like cleaning your house of chametz for Passover. There shouldn't be a little trace of chametz left. There shouldn't be a little trace of idolatry left. Okay, so and Steinsaltz goes on. That is the items dedicated to idol worship. There nothing should be left in your hand. From here, it is derived that it is prohibited to derive benefit from idol worship, but it is permitted to cause benefit. Meaning, although by buying from the store, one indirectly supports idol worship, as a portion of the sales are given to support idol worship, this is not prohibited by Torah law. So the indirect support of idol worship is not prohibited by Torah law. It's only the direct. So that is, nothing should be in your hand, the Torah says. So if it's indirect, it's not in your hand. And Reish Lakish is giving a liberal interpretation to this, allowing for business with non-Jews, even in stores that have the trappings of idol worship. So Reish Lakish is being liberal there, allowing such business. And Rabbi Yochanan says, that's his colleague. There are lots of stories of Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan together in the study house. Rabbi Yochanan says, even if the stores are adorned only with fruit, one is also prohibited from buying from them. This is derived by an a fortiori inference, a kal vachomer, as it is in Hebrew. If it's prohibited to derive benefit from idol worship, is it not all the more so prohibited to cause benefit to idol worship? In other words, indirect is also prohibited because it's still idol worship. You're still causing benefit. So Yochanan says direct or indirect prohibited. Reish Lakish says direct prohibited, indirect okay. All right, so that's this, which is a fascinating idea, which really sets the tone really for how we manage as Jews in a non-Jewish world, right? So if we followed Rabbi Yochanan, it would be nearly impossible for Jews to make a living, or at least our living would be restricted to non-idol worship holiday days. And according to the rabbis, as we've seen in the previous pages, there are lots of idol worshiping holiday days. So our business as Jews, so one thing, you could do business with only Jews. And perhaps, and as we know, for those who try to patronize kosher restaurants, we understand that outside of New York City, the kosher restaurant business is a tough business because non-Jews really aren't going to kosher restaurants, and there aren't enough Jews going to kosher restaurants to keep kosher restaurants in business. And the other thing about it is that our kosher supervising agency in Washington requires a full-time mashgiach on the staff of the restaurant. So it's an extra full-time staff person that a kosher restaurant has to pay for. So that already makes it economically challenging for kosher restaurants to do business outside of New York. So in New York, where there are 2 million Jews, a lot of them like to eat in kosher restaurants. Kosher restaurants do fairly well, but outside of New York, it's tough. So that tangent is all about, if you only focus on it as a Jew, only focus on business, your business patrons being Jews, you might just get by if you're lucky financially. So clearly, Jews as a minority need to do business with non-Jews. And if we're going to say that, if we're going to penalize Jews by saying you can only do business with non-idol worshipers, no, you can only do business with idol worshipers if they don't have trappings of idol worship with them and on them, that's severely restrictive. So that's why Reish Lakish is providing an opening here with a liberal stance, and Yochanan is not. So there's the reality of needing to make a living as a Jew, and there's also the equal reality of the Torah that one of the 3 things for which we're supposed to die and not transgress is idol worship, right? Somebody holds a gun to your head. You can violate 610 of the mitzvahs in order to save your life, but 3 you cannot violate, one of them being idol worship. So that's how serious this is. Just want to close my door. Well, I could. It's okay. So there's the reality of needing to make a living, and there's also the reality that you can't do idol worship, and you can't benefit someone who is doing idol worship too. So both are equally important. And is there any compromise when it comes to idol worship? Okay, so this isn't an issue today. Again, I keep bringing this up, that Christianity is not idol worship, and rabbis in Christian countries knew that. Perhaps they were being more liberal in their approach, because I don't know, if you're just walking into a church, it certainly looks like idol worship. Lots of statues around, and everybody praying to the front of the room. There's a huge statue on the front wall. So yes, the rabbis knew some of the basics of Christianity and knew that that was just a symbol, and that's not the God that Christians are praying to. They're not praying to that necessarily. They're praying to what that represents up on high. Okay, so it's it's splitting hairs, but still, That's how the rabbis understood it. And therefore, doing business with Christians was okay. And so this is all moot today. But again, it's also interesting to about our approach to maintaining Jewish identity and ensuring that our identity remains secure and not tainted by contact with the other. So that's how much do we want to protect ourselves from being tainted? And Reish Lakish is allowing an opening, whereas Rabbi Yochanan is not. Okay, so let's, any questions or comments before we go on? Okay. The Gemara raises an objection to Reish Lakish's opinion from a Baraita, right? So Reish Lakish is the liberal opinion, right? So roses and myrtle forbidden, fruit not forbidden, right? So it gives an opening. So here's a Baraita, a source from the time in the Mishnah, but not in the Mishnah. Rabbi Natan says, on the day in which a reduction is made from the tax in honor of idol worship, they announce and say, anyone who takes a wreath of roses and places it on his head and on the head of his donkey in honor of the object of idol worship, his tax will be reduced. And if one does not place a wreath on one's head, his tax will not be reduced. What should a Jew who is present there do? Okay, so let's understand this. There are taxes, there are tax collectors assigned by the government. This is from the time of the Romans through the Middle Ages. This occurred in Europe as well. Tax collectors was being a tax collector was a job. And your job as a tax collector representing the authority was to collect taxes, and most tax collectors took off the top of what they collected for their own salary and gave the rest to the king or to the queen. And there could be random days in which the tax collector came to town, and they would announce sometimes, according to this Baraita, a discount. So you get a discount if your donkey and you are adorned with roses and myrtle, which we just learned are idol worshiping adornments because they are associated with Dionysus. So what should a Jew do? Should a Jew pay the full tax and not wear a wreath and not have his donkey wear a wreath? Or are you like Yochanan and very strict, not I can't do this. This will show that I worship idols, and therefore I'm penalized financially because I have to pay the full tax. I don't get a deduction. So what do we do? So what should a Jew who is present there do? If he places the wreath on his head and on the head of his donkey, he will be found to derive benefit from idol worship. And if he does not place the wreath on his head, he'll be found to cause benefit to idol worship through the tax that he pays. That's the extra thing about this. You wear the wreath, you get a discount, but you're showing that you have idol worship. But if you pay the full tax, then you are not wearing the wreath. You pay the full tax. You're benefiting idol worship. From here, right? Because the other people get to use that money for the day of the idol worship. From here, the sages stated, one who conducts business in a market of idol worship will be forced either to benefit from or cause benefit to idol worship. Therefore, any animal he bought there should be destroyed, any produce, clothing, or vessels should be left to decompose. And with regard to any money or metal vessels which would not decompose on their own, one should take them and cast them into the Dead Sea. And what constitutes destroying the animal? One cuts off the hooves of the animal from the knee and below. Okay, so this is a pretty fundamentalist approach to idol worship. And the sages are saying you cannot do business in a market of idol worship. right? So if it's a marketplace in which all of it is devoted to idol worship, you can't even buy vegetables, fruits and vegetables there, because no matter what you buy there, it's benefiting idol worship. And if you bought it, you will be violating that verse that Reish Lakish quoted above here, right? Lo yidbak biyadcha me'uma min acherem. The vegetable would be sticking to your hand, and the animal, anything that you buy in that place of idol worship would be sticking to your hand, and that's a violation of the verse from Deuteronomy. Therefore, you can't do it, and you have to get rid of it and destroy it, or if it can't be destroyed or rot by itself, you throw it into the Dead Sea. A place of, if you've been to the Dead Sea, you know what that water, what the high salt content can do to your skin and can do to a ring or any jewelry that you by accident wear into the water. It does. Yes, go ahead, Jules.
I'm confused because
Yeah.
Logically, I can't understand how anybody could say that Catholicism isn't idol worship. I mean, it just seems like an obvious answer that it is.
Well,
how do we get to the answer that it isn't?
All right. So the little bit that I know, and I did not learn this in rabbinical school, the little bit I know about Catholicism is it's, and this is, there's an example of this in the Torah. Remember, in the book of Numbers, the people were subject to a plague, and Moses was told by God to fashion this something called nehushtan. It was a stick which had a representation of a snake on it. The people were being plagued with snakes. So he lifts the snake staff up into the sky in his hand, and the people were looking at it, and the plague stopped. So the rabbis say that by looking at that, their eyes were directed to that, but really directed to heaven, understanding that God is the cause of the end of the plague and not the serpent's staff. So the serpent's staff was a vehicle to help focus the people's attention on heaven and on God. So that same idea is present in Catholicism, that the statue of Jesus in the front of the church helps people direct their attention to Jesus in heaven and not to Jesus on the cross in the front of the room. Okay, so like I said, it's splitting hairs, and it's people could say the same thing when we open the ark. If an outsider comes into a synagogue and see how we all stand up when the ark is open and the Torah is taken out of the ark and we're all touching and kissing the Torah as it walks by us, an outsider would say, "Oh, we're worshiping the Torah scroll." Right? So we understand that the Torah represents who we are as Jews and our tradition, and it's God's word, etc., etc. So we're not worshiping the Torah scroll, we're worshiping what the Torah represents. Okay, so that's how I would answer you, Jules, about Catholicism. No, but the Protestants themselves had a problem. Christians themselves had a problem with Catholicism, thinking that it's idolatry, and that's why in Protestant churches you only have the cross, you don't have Jesus on the cross. Okay, so so it all depends. It's a matter of degrees. If you ask an average Catholic on the street, are you worshiping that Jesus on the cross in the church, or you ask a Catholic who's a Christian who's wearing a cross necklace, are you worshiping this crucifix? I don't know what answer you would get from the average Christian, whether they are worshiping that particular statue or not. But the rabbis understood the nuance and saw a significant enough difference.
Rabbi?
Yes, Julian.
I have a question.
Yeah, Zilla.
It's my understanding that Jews are allowed to sell non-kosher food, like, from pig and seafood, which surprises me.
Yeah.
I just wanted a clarification on that.
Right. So that's a whole different that's not a matter of idolatry. That's a matter of dealing with things that are not that are prohibited by Jewish law. And I don't know the answer to that offhand, Zella. I would have to look that up. So I would say it, and so I know that it is that I know that the chief rabbinate in Israel has tried to prohibit Jews from selling treif in Israel, but I know that there are Jews who engage in that business. And certainly Jews in America deal in the business. There are Jews who are butchers and dealing with non-kosher meat. I'm not sure how that's allowed. I'd have to look it up. So I'm making a note about that. I would ask the same question about other things, like, what should a Jew be allowed to own a gun store to sell ammunition, right? Like gun stores are legal in Maryland, and is it permitted? You could argue that Judaism should be in favor of gun control. But you could argue that, and you could also argue that hunting is okay. But hunting rifles would be okay to sell, but a handgun or automatic, semi-automatic weapon. So I'm just saying these are interesting spiritual questions, and I'd have to look up about Jews selling treif.
I just have a comment about the hunting. If a Jew goes hunting and kills an animal, then they're wasting the animal because it's not kosher.
Right. So if you're hunting with a non-Jewish friend, the non-Jewish friend can eat that animal, right? So it wouldn't be totally for waste. Or if you're using it for some other purpose, like if you're hunting mink and using the animal then for fur, that would be okay.
Okay.
Michael.
Can sell votive candles.
Jews can sell votive candles, right? So that's another thing too. Can Jews engage in business in which is a person of another religion, not an idol worshiping religion, but another religion, benefit? So selling votive candles.
That's not a question. That's a statement.
Yeah. So I just want to look. I want to look up the sources for that permit that. So these are interesting extensions of these laws that we're learning here. Bess.
Didn't we once raise the issue whether a pig farmer in Israel is not raising it for the football, making the football from the skin? That was the purpose of his raising it?
Yeah, I don't think that that's the case. I don't think you can. That's most of raising pigs is for the meat, and that's the main thing that you're getting out of it. The side benefit would be other things from the pig that you can use, but that's not, the skin is not the main thing that you're raising pigs for.
Okay.
I don't think that that's where the money is. Yes.
Rabbi,
Wait just a second, Bess.
I should continue. Along those lines, if a person is not hired to do the job, but then is told he has to execute somebody else, can a Jew
Can a Jew work as an executioner for the
Yeah.
authorities? That's an interesting question. I would say yes. If it's clear that the law of the land allows execution, then a Jew who works, like let's say if a Jew works for the state of Alabama, for example, or the state of Texas, for the penal system there, and happens to be the one to administer the lethal injection, yes, I think a Jew is allowed to do that because the law clearly states in Alabama and Texas and other states that execution is legal and constitutional in those states. A Jew might choose to say, according to his or her beliefs, that they don't want to do that. I wonder if a Jew, if they can be fired for not doing their job of lethal objection. So that'd be another issue for the Supreme Court to decide if you have a website, can you deny can you deny making a website for gay people, which is coming to the Supreme Court too? Or can you, if you are a baker, can you deny making a wedding cake for a gay couple? So, right. So then that's been decided. But that's private business. But also there was a clerk in Kentucky, right, who refused
wouldn't give a license to a
go
same.
inside a marriage license for a gay couple. Now, what happened to her? Was she fired for that, or
Probably given a medal.
no? I don't remember what the legal was. She was ordered to do it. So right. So then yes. Okay. Jules, you had another question, and then Arnie has his hand up too.
I keep saying I'm in the modern world. I like to watch Blue Bloods, and
Okay.
every Sunday they're at the table blessing their food through
Right.
Jesus Christ.
Okay.
Now, I'm not saying this disrespectfully, but I keep wondering: is my watching that program making something non-Jewish out of me?
No. Well, so no. I would say so, but it is a question today in the Jewish world whether we're allowed to visit houses, non-Jewish houses of worship, and the Orthodox do not do that because they don't want to be tainted in any way by non-Jewish religion, and it's not to say that it's idolatry. It is to say that it's not Jewish. And there are some in Orthodox who will not step into a church. I don't have a problem going into a church. I don't even have a problem going into a church while Mass is going on. It's interesting to me. It's their religion. It's not mine. And I clearly in my mind make a distinction that this is interesting to see and to learn about, and these are human beings too, worshiping in a different way, and my being there is not supporting them in any way. It is that's what I say to myself, but Orthodox will say no, it is, you're giving the appearance as if you are supporting that religion and you are influencing it in some way. So watching it on TV is an interesting question because that's indirect, right? You're not actually at the table where that blessing is being said. It's a performance. So I wonder, let's say Blue Bloods, for example, was done on the stage and you're watching a live performance of it. Are you allowed to watch a live performance? It would be the same thing as walking into a church. So I would imagine Orthodox people would not go to hear a performance of Handel's Messiah or a passion play or something, or the reenactment of the whole nativity scene or whatever. So it all depends on your own interpretation of this. So I would say most conservative Jews would allow going to such things because it's clearly it's theirs. It's not mine. Arnie.
I just wanted to share something on the gun control thing that
Yeah.
Spending some holidays in Israel, for example, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. I attended Orthodox shul where I saw several people with sidearms
Yeah.
visible. It
Yeah.
happened to be on the other side of the green line, but they were not soldiers; they were just members.
Right.
So obviously, it's possible to get a gun legally and use it in Israel.
Yes. So there are, so there are soldiers who are on leave, who either soldiers who are in uniform or not in uniform, who come to shul with their guns on them because that's just what they have to do. So yeah, it is off-putting for me to see it for the first time, and not used to that. And I certainly wouldn't want people to come, even though in Maryland, if you have a permit, a carry permit, I still wouldn't want someone who has a carry permit to bring a gun into shul. I just don't think the two, I don't think guns and shul mix. But clearly in Israel, it's okay. But I think that in Israel, it's all part of, in a sense, Israel is still under, in some sense, a state of war, and always under threat of terrorist attack. So it is not, and especially communities that are so-called over the green line, they're more in danger of such attack than, let's say, a community in Beersheba.
Yeah, this was in Hashmonaim, which is on the other side of the green
Yeah,
line.
just of it, right. Yes. So yes. So I'm sure having a discussion with people there as an American outsider visiting versus the people who have invested their lives by moving there. Yeah, it's interesting debate. It's like having a debate also about the Israeli government that is in formation now. We could have opinions about Netanyahu's coalition government, but they are our opinions, and we have really no right, in some ways, to tell Israel what to do, despite what the former president of the United States says about our control as Jews in America over Israeli politics. We don't have any influence at all. So yeah. Now, so all these things, very interesting points that we're bringing up about our relationship and the impact of non-Jewish items on our Jewish lives. Okay.
Can I
Yeah,
go
go
back
ahead.
a second?
Go ahead, Bess.
I'm questioning the means of killing the animals, the donkey, for example, by cutting off the knees, the legs.
Right.
Is that not considered inhumane? And wouldn't it have been more merciful to stab through the ear or the heart?
Yeah, I don't know. And I don't know if they're going to continue to, well, there's a note on it. Let's see. There it is. It's here's the note: cuts off, etc. The owner must cut below the knee so that he will not render the animal a treifa. Although he may not derive benefit from the animal, it is still prohibited to render it a treifa actively. That's what Rashi says. So it's cutting it below the knee. It's not cutting the leg off. I don't think it's amputating. I think it's cutting it. Yeah. So you're rendering it not fit for consumption for a Jew. So if an animal has a visible wound, then yeah, it's still, you can use it as a beast of burden, but if you're planning to eat it, then you can't in other words, can you buy an animal that you intend to slaughter for food? Can you buy an animal? Can you buy a cow from an idol worshiping market? Um, and so they're saying, no, you cannot do that. You have to make a visible wound on it so that you can't slaughter it. Okay? So now, so this is what you have to do with animals, with items that you buy in a marketplace, according to the Baraita. The Gemara explains the objection to Reish Lakish's statement. In any event, the Baraita teaches that it is prohibited to cause benefit to idol worship, as it states, if he places the wreath on his head, then he will be found to derive benefit from idol worship, and if he does not place the wreath on his head, he will be found to cause benefit to idol worship. How then can Reish Lakish claim that it is permitted to cause benefit to idol worship? Right? In other words, so he said right, so he can. So the store that has the rose and myrtles on it, you would be causing benefit, and that would be okay because you're not deriving benefit. So he makes the distinction between deriving and causing. So now, how can he say causing is okay with this example of the reduction in tax? Because if you do not you're between a rock and a hard place. You're either causing benefit or you're deriving benefit. So how do we answer that? Rav Masharshia, son of Rav Edi, said, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish holds as follows. The rabbis disagree with Rabbi Natan, whose opinion is cited in the Baraita, and I spoke in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis who disagree with Rabbi Natan. The Gemara notes, and Rabbi Yochanan, who rules in accordance with the statement of Rabbi Natan, holds that the rabbis do not disagree with Rabbi Natan. Rather, everyone agrees that it is prohibited to cause benefit to idol worship. Okay, so not only can't you derive benefit, you also can't cause benefit. So the Gemara asks, and is it so that they do not disagree? But isn't it taught in a Baraita? One may go to a fair of Gentiles whose purpose is to honor idol worship, and buy from the Gentile, and you can buy from the Gentiles animals and slaves and maidservants, as the purchase raises the items to a more sanctified state. This is a statement, Ma'alin Bakodesh. You are raising something. So if you're buying something from an idol worshiper and then bringing it into a Jewish home, you are raising the status of that item from it being with an idol worshiper and now into a Jewish home. So you're raising the status of the animal and the slave and the maidservant by taking them out of a non-Jewish, an idol worshiping environment and bringing them into a Jewish environment. So you're actually doing a mitzvah of Ma'alin Bakodesh, raising the sanctity of that item. Okay, so you can go to a fair, you can buy animals, slaves, and maidservants because you're raising their holiness state. And he may buy houses, fields, and vineyards from them due to the mitzvah to settle Eretz Yisrael. So, which is exactly what the Jewish agency did before the establishment of the state of Israel, buying up land, right? The JNF. When people put money in those blue boxes 100 years ago, you're helping JNF buy land in Israel from the Ottoman Empire or from individual Arabs. And you are fulfilling this mitzvah right here of returning the land of Israel to Jewish ownership. Okay, so there's a whole, the politics behind that is another problem, right? So are you doing it legitimately? Are you actually talking to the owner and saying exactly what your plans are with buying the land or the vineyard or the house from them, etc. So, yeah. So the whole process of the JNF and the World Zionist Congress and other places that were buying up the land of Israel to allow Jewish settlement of the land of Israel is a whole other political thing. But the idea here, one individual buying a house from another non-Jewish individual, you are fulfilling the mitzvah of settling Eretz Yisrael. And one may write the necessary deeds and confirm them in their Gentile courts, although this involves an acknowledgement of their authority, because it is as though he is rescuing his property from their hands, as the court's confirmation and stamp of approval prevents the seller from denying the sale and claiming that the property still belongs to him. So you can work with an individual idolater, and you can even work with the courts of idolaters in order to benefit a Jew or benefit the greater mitzvah of settling the land of Israel. Okay, so this is fascinating that you can derive benefit in this way from a non-Jew. And if he is a priest, he may become ritually impure by going outside Eretz Yisrael, even though a priest is usually prohibited from leaving Eretz Yisrael to the impure land outside, in order to litigate with them and to contest their claims. So a Kohen is allowed to become impure in non-Jewish lands in order to litigate claims. And just as a priest may become ritually impure by going outside Eretz Yisrael, so may he become ritually pure for this purpose by entering a cemetery. So now we're going to get into this discussion. What are the cases? We know this from Jewish practice today. There are many Kohanim who take their Kohen status very seriously and will not enter a cemetery at all, unless it is for the burial of an immediate family member, someone they would be saying Kaddish for. The Torah tells us specifically a Kohen can only become ritually pure for his own family member, but for anybody else, he's not allowed to. So we might know Kohanim from experience, I certainly do, who don't come into, don't attend funerals and certainly don't walk into a cemetery. So now, if we're saying here that a Kohen is allowed to become ritually impure, what is this? So the Gemara interrupts its citation of the Baraita to express surprise at this last ruling. Can it enter your mind to say that a priest may become impure by entering a cemetery? The halacha that a cemetery imparts ritual impurity to a priest is by Torah law. How could the sages override this prohibition? Rather, the Baraita is referring to an area where there is uncertainty with regard to the location of a grave or a corpse, owing to the fact that a grave had been unwittingly plowed over, and the bones may have become scattered throughout the field. Such a field imparts ritual impurity by rabbinic law. So, by Torah law, the Kohen is not allowed to impurify himself. But rabbinic law, where there's a question, so like a field that may have had a Jewish corpse buried in it, but then plowed over, but you don't know, and if the priest is involved in litigation in restoring that field to Jewish ownership, then a priest is allowed to potentially impurify himself in that process of restoring the field, because it's rabbinic law and not Torah law. Okay, we good? The Baraita continues, and a priest may likewise become ritually impure and leave Eretz Yisrael in order to study Torah or in order to marry a woman. Rabbi Yehuda says, when does this allowance apply? It applies when he cannot find a place to study in Eretz Yisrael. But when the priest can find a place to study in Eretz Yisrael, he may not become ritually impure by leaving the country. So this is another fascinating idea about, the sanctity of the land of Israel and how long do we maintain the sanctity of the land of Israel, right? These are the rabbis talking post-destruction of the temple and great migration of Jews from Israel to Babylonia. And so this is another element of maintaining old practice, traditional practice, right? Maintaining the separation from idolaters, maintaining the sanctity of the land of Israel, and trying to keep people in the land of Israel, and trying to keep the land of Israel Jewish in the face of great adversity and chaos going on around them. So here are the rabbis grasping at straws. Oh, we got to keep the Kohanim in the country because leaving the country would impurify themselves. Well, but if there's no place to study Torah, well, we got to let them leave. And if there's no woman to marry, well, we got to let them leave in order to marry. So it's just, this is a reflection of what's going on in society. How to try to keep people in Israel, at the same time understanding it's dangerous to live in Israel. There's idol worship here. There aren't that many Jews left here in Israel. So it's a pretty sad, tragic reflection on what was going on in Jewish society at that time. Okay, yes, Michael, and then, okay, so we're gonna stop here for today. It's 10:22. We'll pick up this, what I think is a fascinating conversation in the text next time. So we are meeting next Sunday, and then we're off for two weeks. Okay, so let me stop share. We're on page 67. And I hope everybody has a good rest of the day and a good week, and see you next Sunday.
Bye.
Bye.